Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, a new development that is happening right now. Thousands of Hondurans in U.S. bound migrant caravan head into Mexico. And mine is entitled Thousands of Migrant Honduras U.S. Bound. And the Mexican police are outnumbered. So as you see here, out of the world, out of Yahoo, by a Delphine Schrank and Reuters, a sea of Hondurans headed towards the U.S. Central American migrants walk along the highway near the border with Guatemala as they continue their journey trying to reach the U.S. in Tapachula, Mexico, October 21st, 2018, by Delphine Schrank. So Tapachula, Mexico, defying the efforts of four governments to break them up. Thousands of mostly Honduran migrants rose at dawn on Sunday from the shores of the river between Guatemala and Mexico and continued their trek northward. But even as the U.S.-bound caravan moved into Mexico, Mexican police and riot gear were deployed at the highway junctions as a military helicopter circled overhead, prompting many migrants to wonder if police will make mass arrests and seek to turn the caravan back. The migrants pose a challenge to the Mexican President Enrique Peña Nieto. His promise late last week to stop the travelers' plans to press ahead to the U.S. border without the proper documentation. So many of the bedraggled travelers of the swollen caravan appear determined to keep moving forward, saying that they are fleeing a toxic mix of violence, poverty, and endemic corruption and would not turn back. We're going to make it, and we're going to keep moving so long as they don't stop us, said the Honduran Jefe Borjas, 17 years old, marching alongside a childhood friend at the head of the giant column that stretched far down the highway to the horizon. The multitude of migrants clogged the highway leading north from the border city of Ciudad Hidalgo in the southern Mexican state of Chiapas, many breaking into songs. If you send us back, we'll return. If you send us back, we'll return. A large crowd shouted in unison under the intense glare of the morning sun. So we are not criminals and we are workers. U.S. President Donald Trump has threatened to halt the Hondurans and the Guatemalan people and potentially close down the U.S. border with Mexico with the help of the military if the migrants' march is not stopped. Mexico government has said throughout the past week that it would register the migrants and process requests for asylum. Those attempting to skip the process would face deportation, but the size of the caravan will test Mexico, which has sought help from the UN to manage this issue. The encampment for 2 nights using backpacks, pillows, and tents made of trash bags on the long bridge between Guatemala and Mexico. The migrant caravan began in San Pedro Sula, Honduras, last week and grew exponentially as it Guatemala. On Saturday, Mexican immigration authorities only allowed some 640 migrants through the official border crossing on a bridge spanning the Scituate River. The slow pace of legal processing prompted several thousands to cross the river illegally by raft or swimming, according to the local officials and the migrant organizers. So I'm panning back up, and you see the swollen crowd and the sea of people, and they are by the thousands. So I wanted to go into a little bit more about the Honduran people. And for those people whom don't know, before you start saying this, yes, they are coming. They are coming. And so I took the liberty to look this up. There is African descendants who are called Afro-Hondurans. Black Hondurans are Hondurans of African descent, and they descended from African slaves imported by the Spaniards, or Spanish, Garifunas, and Creole peoples. And so if you see the swell of the crowd, you'll see that many of these people look just like African Americans because they are African descent. Approximately 5% of 350,000 of Honduran population is Black or Afro-Honduran, and mainly reside in the country's Caribbean and Atlantic coasts. So the Black population comes from the number of sources, and most are descendants of the West Indies or West Indian Islands, brought to Honduras as slaves and indentured servants. So I'm going to flip over here so you can see the scene. You see the Mexican police, and they clash with the Hondurans and the Guatemalans. And so this is what is happening. Donald Trump threatens to cut, and it says here, 66 million in aid to Honduras unless migrant caravan is stopped. So take a good look, people. This is what is going on right now. And this is a sea swelling of people by the thousands. So Donald Trump is very disgruntled. The US president threatened on Tuesday to cut off aid to Honduras unless the country took steps to halt the migrant caravan, which has doubled in size since it set off from a gang-plagued city on Saturday. The group, now believed to be 3,000 people strong, has been confronted by riot police on the Honduras-Guatemala border, but by Monday evening had managed to cross. They're persistent. The organizer of the northern-bound group, Bartolo Fuentes, a Honduran former politician, was then detained by the Guatemalan police. Mr. Trump tweeted that he was considering ending financial assistance to Honduras, worth nearly $66 million in 2019. The United States has strongly informed the president of Honduras that if the large caravan of people heading to the U.S. is not stopped and brought back by Honduras to Honduras, no more money or aid will be given to Honduras effective immediately, he said. It was not clear how Honduras would be able to exercise control over people who had already left that country. And so here's Donald Trump's tweet. The U.S. has strongly informed the president of Honduras that if the large caravan of people heading to the U.S. is not stopped and brought back to Honduras, no more money or aid will be given to Honduras, effective immediately. October 16, 2018. Mike Pence, the vice president, tweeted that has spoken to Juan Orlando Hernandez, president of Honduras, delivered a strong message of at POTUS, Politics of the US. No more aid if the caravan is not stopped, said Mr. Pence, told him US will not tolerate this blatant disregard of our border and sovereignty. The current group making their way north plan to seek refuge status in Mexico or pass through the US, saying that they are fleeing poverty and violence. Mr. Hernandez, who was warned that cutting off aid will only worsen the conditions of Central America and drive more migrants toward the US of A. So human rights organizations called on Guatemalan government to guarantee the migrants are a safe passage. So here you see the people pictured here. Honduran immigrants, some of more than 3,000 people in a migrant caravan, traveled north on Tuesday near the Coazalaltepeque. So the government of Guatemala is responsible for the security and integrity of the people who are on its territory, and their human rights should not be violated for any reason. A statement by 18 migrant support groups said, "We demand the cessation of all the police and administrative action that restricts their fundamental rights." Mexico, under strong US pressure has now said that it will block members of the caravan from entering its territory if they are not with permits. They don't have permits. They're going to try to block them. So in April, another migrant caravan set off from Guatemala with the numbers of 1,200 people in an annual symbolic march. They were assisted by the Mexican government granting them transit and humanitarian visas, a move which infuriated Donald Trump. When the group reached the border of 150, around 150 attempted to seek asylum, but were turned back by the authorities, saying that they could not process their claims. So this is what is happening right now. This is out of the Telegraph News. So there are many people headed right now by the thousands to the US, and they're US bound, and the crowd is swelling. Thanks for listening.